तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्ति। Okay, so we will now discussing what Karma Yoga is. Okay? And within Karma Yoga there are many different aspects which make any action into Karma Yoga. I will not go through it again because otherwise we keep on repeating the same thing. But the aspect that we were now discussing is when it comes to choosing an action, then there is a verse which is chapter 2, verse 15. It says, Yogaha karmasu kaushalam. Okay? So what is karma? With reference to karma, there is what we say kaushalam, using your discretion. Because when we perform an action, there is one thing that we have, which is what we call free will. Okay? So that means that anybody who thinks that Hinduism or Bhagavad Gita or Vedas, they talk about destiny, yeah, right? Everything is predetermined. This is one of the biggest misconceptions. Please understand that, right? Because what it talks about is not predetermined things. It's talking about laws of cause and effect. And cause and effect laws are at play. So every second you have a choice, and that choice, depending upon the nature of the choice, it will produce a result. Okay? In fact, it is very much in keeping with the laws of nature. If you study physics and all, every action has opposite reaction. What is so difficult to understand in that? Please understand, it's one of the most logical ways of looking at the world. And if there are all the laws that are operating in the universe, and the laws don't operate within a limited time frame, they all operate what? Along with the creation come the laws which govern the creation. Okay? So the laws of cause and effect, which is what we call karma, they operate along with what? The creation. Okay? And this is where we say that these results that we experience today, they are not disconnected from the past. They are connected to the past through what? Laws of cause and effect. But is it only determined by the past? No. Past in conjunction with what? The present. Right? So that means it's very easy to understand. Who you are today, is it function of just the decisions that you made this morning? No. It is a function of what? Cumulative. Absolutely. So that means it is a function of this morning in connection to what? Everything else that you have done. Right? So this is, and now you extend that, and that is what we mean by laws of karma. Okay? And therefore, if you want to change the outcome in the future, what would you do? Change your actions today. Because that's what you have in hand. Right? So this is, it's one of the most dynamic way of living your life, where acknowledging and owning up to the choices. Otherwise what happens is we get stuck, we have a mental take, right? And all the past holds us, and we keep on dwelling on the past, and we don't make enough use of the present to make the changes that we want to make. So we try to change things that we cannot change, and don't make enough effort to make changes when we can. Okay? So this law of karma and dharma is making you see that when it comes to result of the action, it is provided by the laws, connecting your present actions with all the past actions. But when it comes to your choice of making an action, you can't just say, let laws of karma operate, because they depend upon your actions. to produce a result. Okay? So karma sukaushalam is when I'm making that choice has to be guided by certain realities. So what is the first reality that we saw last time? We talked about what we call samanya dharma. Okay? What did we see? Samanya dharma is what we call the universal ethical values. Okay? Now, the way the universal ethical values is discussed in the Veda and Gita is fundamentally different from the general discussion of ethics. Okay? Why is it different? Because for most of there are many differences. One, the first difference is that for many, ethics is a construction of a human being, right? So, or let's say religion, or what, teachers, parents, or society. So we think that human beings come together. If you go and attend any ethics class in any of the American or European universities, well, how will they talk about ethics? What is the origin of ethics? What do you think is the origin of ethics?
It's this interpersonal relationship, the formation of society.
Exactly. So that means what they think about it is like individuals get together and they say to live in harmony, we have to follow certain rules. Right? So they become the implicit contract between human beings, and the laws of the nations are based on that implicit contract. Right? Now, Vedas talk about universal ethics is not just an arrangement made by human beings. What it says is that it is inbuilt in your human psyche. It's a much more fundamental. Without sitting with you, I know that I don't want to be hurt by you.
So somebody like Tarzan who grew up in the jungle with no human beings also knows.
Also knows. Exactly. In fact, even the animals. You go to Masai Mara, you see all these. You went to Masai Mara. You see all these deers. They are drinking water, but they are constantly looking here. Anytime, because all these lions and all, they know that they will go and drink water. So that becomes a place where what? They come. Yeah. And they are constantly, and they are so peaceful, but they are very alert, right? The minute somebody, they all run away. That means even they know they don't want to be back. Nobody wants to lose one's life. Survival instinct is something which is so basic to human beings, and not even to human beings, but to all living beings. Okay? So that means, but for human beings, it is a little bit more evolved than just survival instinct. You also know that you cannot cheat others, and others what? Also want the same from you. Lying, hurting, all these things is something that a human being is born with. Okay? So last time we saw that's why it makes it into universal values. Okay? Now we saw that there is a nuance to it, even though it is universal value. So that means that if you go against it, what did we see? There is a cost. So this is where I'm saying that when we talk about dharma, this is the second point where we differ from the traditional view of dharma. And that is, for us, dharma is not something which is prescriptive. Right? So it was very interesting. Last time I was just talking about the way the laws operate, and it was very interesting. So Gopi was saying, oh, so now you're telling me that what? I can't drink, I can't do this, I can't do that. And I said, in fact, I never said any of that. It is not prescriptive. It does not micromanage you. Please understand. It makes you see certain realities. See how the world operates. Okay? And you make your own choices based on your understanding of how the world operates. Okay? How much, what, at what time, all these decisions you have to make. That's why it is something which is very dynamic. It's challenging. It's not like, okay, now let me refer to the book and then now let me see what needs to be done. That would be boring life. Imagine, every solution you just have to refer to a book and everything is given. There is a lot of what? Personal judgment, and that what? How are you going to assess situations is all depending upon what? How much you have cultivated your thinking capacity. And this is what we call human growth. Situations can be similar for two people, but they can respond very differently. And depending upon that response, what? There will be consequences which are completely different. Okay? So it's a very intelligent way of engaging with the universe. So that we saw. The other thing which was very, very interesting and which really brought out what Sakar was talking about is our implicit assumption about the world. Okay? In that scenario of relativity of dharma, okay, and this is a very, very common thing, right? So we talked about this person who was giving a shelter to a Jew, and then what do you imagine? That, oh, anyway the Nazi will find out, right, that I'm hiding, and I also have to protect my children and my family, so therefore, so as though the universe is a dumb entity, okay, and therefore, and everything which can possibly go wrong will go wrong, and with that scenario we make the decisions. That implicit assumption we make the decision. Now, what are we talking about?
But that's a calculated, sensible decision. That
But
It's also assessment of risk to some extent.
yeah,
exactly. One thing is assessment of risk, which is a possibility, but many times we assume the
we're
worst,
talking about the book
and
thief, right?
many of our
Yeah, that sort of thing. But then
Now in this
you
Charlie
said-
Hebdo thing,
yeah.
in the Charlie Hebdo thing, the lady said, the lady who let the terrorists in, said that they threatened to kill her daughter, who she just picked up from
Yes,
the
yeah.
and then they went in and they killed 12
12
people.
yeah.
I know
It's
but
in
it's
the name of
choice.
religion only. Yeah. So see, that's why we are not talking about religion. See, please, yes, I'm not saying that you. This is where you have to see the difference between Vedanta and everybody else, because otherwise you'll mix up everything. We are not talking about you should do this. We are saying that there are laws, and if you transgress the laws, there are consequences. Nobody can
so
avoid those
logical
consequences.
these laws that there is no point in
You
arguing.
can't, exactly. So that means that don't think that the person escapes, the human legal system means the person escapes the consequences. There are consequences. Like, there is a law of gravity. You can't say, oh, you know, I don't care whether there is a law of gravity. You go trying to walk there, you'll fall.
Exactly. There's something you just can't define.
You can't overcome, and it has got nothing to do with Hindu, Muslim, Christian. It's got nothing to do. Please understand that, right?
But
It's
this
not.
lady, I'm sorry, what she said, the lady who let them
Yeah.
in.
Yeah.
So she saw the situation
Yes.
and made her choice.
Yes.
And there was a consequence.
Yes.
I mean, for her, the consequence was okay, her child was saved.
But she has to live with the fact that her decision
Kills
caused
so
another
much.
kid.
So that is
that's
also
what-
part of her consequence.
Yes.
That's no choice she had when either let her daughter die
shot her,
or, and she didn't know how, right? So
in a way,
now we know
it's a
that she was
calculated
going to die.
risk.
So when
Yeah.
she walked in, she didn't know what
She
was
didn't
happening. She was hoping that somebody would save them, some negotiator. would
Yeah,
help,
at
you
least
know.
that's a
At that point, she didn't know 12 were going to
No,
die.
no.
So
That's
And
right.
she
Yeah.
saved herself and her kid, otherwise they would have shot her and walked in.
That's why we don't say categorically that her. This is why we
Was
say
right
that it's
or wrong.
yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
Yeah.
Please understand that, right?
You can't.
We don't say, because the situations are different, the consequences, you don't know totally what is going to happen, right? But what I'm talking about is the psyche has to be that there is this law which is at work, right? There is an intelligence in the universe. Universe is not dumb. So every action that you perform, when it is done with that awareness, maybe you would do things differently. Maybe. Or maybe you will do the same thing. But you need to change the way you look at the universe. Okay? In some cases it will make a big difference, in some cases it may not make a big difference. But you have to change the way you see how the universe works. right? So that is the second thing, which is a very important thing to recognize, that you are not living in a dumb world. Okay? And the third thing, which is, even though it is universal, there is this whole difficulty of, that things are relative, and then there is a difficulty of what? Right interpretation. And we saw an easy example where something was clearly what? Wrong. Where at times lying becomes an important, we do it all the time. Let's say there is a terminally ill patient. Now how, as a doctor, do you always tell them that this is what you have, or do you use your discretion as to who's ready and who's not ready? How do you act with?
I deal with children in a culture of
Yeah, so there is no
I
question.
tell them.
You tell them upfront.
Yeah, and I don't listen to relatives who say don't tell me. Because the patient is my prime. If he says don't tell my relatives, I'll listen. I don't think they should be denied this information because they may want to do certain things. I sometimes feel otherwise. I feel sometimes the patient is not ready to hear it yet.
Yes.
So I may phase it out and prepare them before I actually tell
That's
them.
another matter. That's
Meaning that
how you tell them is another matter.
Once you know, you may not immediately maybe
convey all the time.
That you will take an educated guess and
but
decision.
eventually your responsibility
You have
is
to
to
do. So that means you don't just follow textbook and say, okay, now I have to tell.
But there's nothing
How
wrong.
you tell, when you tell, how do you prepare? This is all your discretion, please understand. And that's what makes one person mature and the other person not so mature. So you constantly have to be alert in how
Sometimes you make the wrong decision.
Exactly.
You have to live with it.
Right? So this is what we say, that the whole living a life of dharma is a very, it's really a very beautiful.
And it's a constant challenging of your mind. There is no,
challenge.
I've understood it
There's a
today, so
big-
not tomorrow I don't have to exercise my mind.
Exactly.
Tomorrow another
Bella.
situation.
Absolutely.
So once
Right?
we had this clinical situation years ago, and it was a real dilemma. I was working with this very senior doctor, and his best friend's daughter got engaged. And the boy who she got engaged to came to us with an MRI scan, and he had a small acoustic neuroma in his
Tumor in the ear.
small tumor in the nerve into the ear. And it was so small, he had no other symptoms. So we could have just monitored it. It was one of that size where you can just monitor the patient over years, and if it doesn't grow, then you just leave them alone. Because the surgery is very complex and it can cause a whole bunch of things. But the thing is that his best friend's daughter was marrying this boy. So do you tell your friend?
You can't.
Or do you not tell him?
I don't think you can.
Yeah, so then
And so, but
You can't.
So there's you can't.
but you can't. But for him, it was his.
It was a personal,
Really close. I mean, it's like someone really close to me whose child has grown up, who's as good as my own daughter. And at least they should know that this thing is there, okay?
But I think the situation would have been very different if you had found a terminal cancer in the
I'm
in
just
the
saying.
person. No, I'm just saying that
Terminally is different, you would tell.
So
but
then
she
what
was
did you do?
that-
Just listen to her now once
Yeah,
I
so
let her finish her
eventually,
story.
I mean, we both vacillated about it, and he was intimately involved with preparing for the wedding. And for like 2 weeks, both of us, and he's no longer alive. He was very senior. So we decided that we would tell the boy himself that he should confide.
Yes.
I think
That's the best.
course of
That was the best.
As the partner, she should know. And then if she wants to tell her parents, she tells them. And if they came back to sir and told him that you didn't tell us, he says then, because there are people who can't take it or who say, why did you, allow. He says then we just leave.
He, sir, should be available to counsel the girl
Yeah.
as to what are the risks of this acoustic neuroma.
Correct.
So
So
he
we-
offers his service for that.
Yeah. So we called him and we chatted with him. And we told him that please bring her and let's do it together because though but fortunately he had already told her. And
you were worried about nothing.
We were worried about
In a
nothing.
way, you were
Yeah,
worried
yeah.
about
But for
nothing.
2-3 weeks.
Yeah, you were.
And it so happened that those people would come and I would meet them every day and we were like, oh God, what to do?
Yeah.
Because it was
I
very,
guess a priest in a confessional has
it
this
was
issue.
very radical. And it was almost like his own daughter, you know. So what do you do? And then eventually we told her that she should be upfront with her parents and tell them. But then I don't know what she did. We never asked her.
But at least you did your part, which is very, very
I was going to
important.
say, what a learning experience.
What a learning, exactly.
Yeah, it was
See,
it
you
was
do
quite
your
something.
part and don't over-assume the responsibility.
Yeah.
I think this is the cleverest.
Yeah.
I don't
think
over-assume the
Over-assume.
responsibility.
Yeah.
And three sentence.
I think that's
If we
very
did break
yeah.
the friendship, but we
Yeah.
didn't visit the worst consequence.
Yes.
What were the worst consequences?
Yeah.
For him, on a personal scale also, forget professional. On a personal level, it would break his friendship of some 50 years. But we visited it and he said it's okay.
Wow. Very nice.
That was really
Excellent. So what did you learn from this example? It's a very nice example. You know, these are real life dilemmas and we have to make decisions.
And they're going to come in everyone's life.
And exactly, it's
come
in
in some form
everybody's
or the
life.
other.
Yeah.
What we call the values do something.
Yeah.
This is a professional
Yeah.
code of ethics, right?
Absolutely.
Get a clearer mind and then give a clear
Absolutely.
Don't just jump.
We just jump into things and we don't even think clearly, right? Either we over-assume responsibility or we are totally passive, right?
We
And
couldn't do either.
You know, two of the things from her story is what you told us. One is to look at all the perspectives.
exactly.
And the second is the connection. That her decision or your boss's decision, how is it going to affect?
Yeah, you must
So-
visit.
So
the-
both these things, I think, would be part of your deliberation.
Also, the thing
before
is, if you, like she says, you know, you step back and you review the situation and then review all the consequences
Yeah.
and be aware that this can happen. I mean, when we discussed it between us, we both came, you know, that this is the worst case scenario, but this can also happen. And if this happens, this is how we deal with it. If this happens, this is how we deal with it. And then you take the step.
Yeah.
Then you're better prepared.
You have to prioritize the consequences and then go with the one.
Yeah.
And sometimes you have only a split second.
Yeah, you have one.
Yeah, that's why it is difficult, and
Those are
this
the
is
tough ones.
why you need to nurture your psyche in a way that what?
I mean, I think every
That it
single
is
action is a story.
Yeah, it's a
so
story.
true. It's a
Yeah.
story and it has series of consequences that you don't even know. And this is why we do this Gayatri mantra every day.
Oh,
Take my mind in the right direction. Because there are so many unknown variables and you still have to make a decision.
Yeah.
So you try your best and you ask for help.
Yes.
And you get it.
And you get
And you
it.
get it.
Exactly.
Yeah, you get it.
Exactly.
And you get it. This is the most intelligent way of living your life. Use your free will and where you don't have all the answers. This is a fact. Many situations are very tricky. Then you ask for help.
Yeah.
You ask. This is where I say, don't think universe is dumb.
No, the universe always ends.
Yeah, there is an intelligence there. This is what we call Ishvara. All pervading intelligence.
And wouldn't you say it is there within each
Yeah,
one of us all the
absolutely.
time?
That's
Absolutely.
conscience.
But you invoke that.
Yes,
You
because
ask
I would
for
want
it.
to
Use
make
your
a
free will.
connection with
Yeah,
your
if there is a
soul.
potential, collapse that potential through your action. Okay? So this is what we say. The whole way of operating or engaging in the world changes. Dharma is a very, very, very dynamic. The way Dharma is seen by Vedic or Gita is very dynamic. Now, let's move to Arna's story and let's see, because when the film that you saw, and now we are ready to analyze that, because now I have prepared you what? Different steps of analyzing how to look at Dharma, and then now let's listen to her story and see what we would do if we were.
So this is a complex plot. There's a little child that is that disappeared.
She gave it, we know the story. Yeah.
But let's
I want
say
to relate
no,
to
no,
the
listen,
discussion.
no, listen to it once, all of us together, so we are all at the same. Yeah.
So this little child disappeared, and there's this young investigative couple that is investigating the disappearance of the kid. The mother of the child is a drug addict and
Single mom.
and all of that. So investigation happens, subsequently lots of death, seems to be lots of intrigue in the plot, but eventually case is closed, 6 months, child is not found. Then a year later, one of the investigators sees the kid. There's a police officer involved in the whole investigation, and he has lost his child to some sort of gang situation some years ago. Sees the kidnapped child with the police officer and his wife being looked after, nurtured, hidden away, living a life. The man feels that he now needs to reopen the case, return the kid to the mother. The female in the investigation says, the kid is happy, the mom is sorted, leave it alone. In the film, the man does actually reopen the case. The kid is given back to the mother, to the original mother, and the film ends with this man visiting them at home. Mother's going out partying, the kid is alone watching TV, and he sits there to babysit the kid. So question is,
Was that the right
choice? What dictated it? What is right? I mean, it's sort of, what would you do in that situation?
Couldn't there have been some sort of child protection procedure that could have been activated?
What is more important, having the actual mother with the kid eventually?
No, but if she's such a not nice mother,
But
there are laws.
But who decides?
But that
Can you
social
decide
services
that?
decides
Or
that.
she may have changed after the child went
She
on.
has.
She did.
No, I'm saying she didn't, but the police officer
Could have, yeah.
might have thought that after so long, if I take the child back, she might be, and she is the biological mother, and
I think maybe they could have given the child 3 months.
It's
with
also
the
a
mother and
it's not
trial.
It's not a trial story. Here it's to expose the police officer because you're sending him to jail. It's the truth. It's about really
about
Yeah,
exposing
it's
the
really
truth.
about the
And
truth.
how important is it to expose the truth or act on the truth or disregarding consequences?
So I think
That's
so.
really
What
the
you're
question
asking
here.
is it okay to do something good by the wrong way?
Yes.
Yeah, and
the
in a
question.
way I'm saying,
Yeah.
is it okay to play God in some sense, seeing the situation?
Do good things by
Yes,
wrong
it is.
means. Yeah.
no, but he also had a personal interest because he had lost the child. So it wasn't.
No, this is another person.
Investigation.
No.
He's investigating a case.
The child had lost his own child.
Yeah.
So
and
he has another.
No, sorry. The bit that I have
Wrong is also
wanted
wrong.
to mention is the police officer was aware of his family situation, and it came to his attention that this child is in an environment that is not nice.
But then
He plotted the whole thing.
He actually kidnapped
Yeah, so
So
he
he
actually
kidnapped the
kidnapped
child, right?
the child. He
Yeah.
set up this whole kidnap
That's wrong.
because he believed that he was getting this child out of an environment to look after this child.
Because the
Yeah.
intention which you start
Yes.
that whole action is wrong. So to think you're doing good with a
No, so
wrong
he is
intent
not
is
justified. He is absolutely
He's
not
not
justified in kidnapping.
Yes.
So
we're talking about the investigator.
Yeah,
Whether
it's
the
all investigator. Then
should have-
having had all that, the case is closed, it's all done. So now you have all the perspectives. Now what choice do you make? Is there a justification to not
Open up the
interfere?
case.
That is my question. Meaning that was something that bothered me because I'm not, in a way it's very sort of, this is the truth and you have to live by the truth. So I
the
think that
male
he had to do what he
investigating
did.
officer
But-
proved that he had
No, but I think there is a case
So
where
it
it
is
is of the
intention.
child
that he wanted to
versus the truth, versus guilt and whether you need to punish someone, or are we now worrying about a child? I mean,
Yeah,
That's why I
think
think
it's
it's
about
for
finishing a case,
I think it's a
Anna.
shutting the file, or is it about the child? before.
He should have gone and met that mother, because after all he's sending this child back to what is supposed to be the biological mother.
No,
And
he's just punishing what was done wrong.
He's being too, he's being clinical.
Yeah, but it's not in his hands. Once he exposes
no?
it, then it's the law and all
No,
of
but
that.
it's in his hands. The decision was, shall I expose?
Yeah, he
Yeah,
had
so
the
that
option.
was-
But I think if you know that you're sending a child
And he
down
had the
quiet.
consequence to live with it, that I
quiet.
know this child is there and I'm not.
repercussions on that.
It was a struggle.
It's the male thinking with his mind, the female thinking with her
Over
mind.
security and just
My question is, what is a more right way of thinking? That was my, like, I couldn't at the end of the film decide who was more right.
Maybe
I
there
think
are no
right or
absolutes.
wrong.
I think there are perhaps no absolutes in ethics.
No, but how do we analyze
How
it?
do you analyze
I want
it?
help here.
Yeah.
Like what
Exactly.
what would be
How
a
do
more
you-
clearer way of thinking here? And what are the odds? No, how do I wait?
I don't think you'll get a
I
satisfying answer.
think in the Western world, and I have lived as a pediatrician
It's
in
a
the Western
dilemma.
world.
It's a dilemma.
It remains a
Yeah,
dilemma.
but we're here to
Yeah,
try
but
and
try to
find ways
how you will
to
go
reduce
about
our
making a
decisions.
decision.
So what I'm trying to say is that here is a mother who's not a good mother, right? And I think in the Western world over there, they have systems in place where such a child can be taken away from the mother in a very legal, social way. So bad mothers who are not looking after their children, they have social services which will look into the matter, analyze. So if this police officer thought that this child was not being looked after and he wanted to rescue this child, he could have always volunteered to be a foster parent. He could have gone down a more legal way, reported this mother to social services, followed that
The
up.
police officer's decision was totally wrong. That
Wrong,
is no
correct,
argument.
correct.
No.
But
Even
it's talking
talking
about
about
So I know, I understand. I understand. So when there is an other option
Subsequent
of
to restoring the whole thing. Yeah, which he might have
that
done.
also could have happened, or
Which he might have done.
he was, even to think that there are options, then why did he kidnap the child? It wasn't like such a dramatic thing that
So
he
he
had
needs
to
be
save the
punished.
child.
So in a way,
so
he needs to be
be
punished, and therefore it is a better decision.
Yeah, maybe that's what I feel.
It is a better decision, but yeah, good.
But having done it already, now that the crime has been committed, yes, that's still a dilemma.
And I think the other learning is that no matter how right you believe your action is, there are consequences that may not be pleasant. No
You still
matter
can't
what
do wrong
choice you
things.
make. Yeah.
Wrong is always wrong.
I think I wouldn't have.
Once you do something wrong, you think you can do it
See,
again.
that's, I for sure, in my logic tells me
I think I would have.
then, but
I would have
still,
thought
I
about
have the opportunity in a way maybe to allow a better good by
For
not
Anas, it's following a clinical format. For the male, he followed the law, what is the right way, and the woman was following her emotions. She was doing in a different way. There's no written for emotions, there's a written for our in
and
our
he pays
society.
a
the
price
mystic
because
way.
she leaves him. She
Absolutely.
cannot live with his decision. So
Right.
he's paid a price that she leaves
See
him.
the consequences.
He also has to face the consequences
Of the child being unhappy.
This child being unhappy.
Happy,
He's put her there. So he has the responsibility now to make a difference to this child's life.
But at the same time, he probably wouldn't have been able to live with the other
But
decision also.
yeah.
What
But
connection
the
they
first
must
child-
all come with.
I know.
That is something that I'm constantly amazed by. I think that's what makes us.
And
There are
I
no
think-
coincidences in these.
Am I right in saying you can't always be very righteous?
Yeah,
So there are laws and there are
But
consequences.
in a way here, he is doing the more righteous thing.
Yeah.
He's too righteous.
That's the question. Is he
I-
too
And
righteous?
it's a stumbling
That is my
block in
question.
the end
Is
because
he
now
too righteous? But everybody
he's too
seems to think
righteous.
no.
Okay.
I wouldn't.
No, so like in that movie of Wednesday when Nasiruddin Shah kills off those 4 terrorists, finally they don't punish him, right? They ignore him.
When he sees him, he recognizes
He recognizes him. He sees that this is the guy who's broken the law. But they decide not to do anything about
So
it.
then in this situation, maybe that the woman was.
So there are both ways of it.
Okay, now in fact here when she's talking about all this series of dilemmas, you first need to identify from who are you talking about, right? So now within the whole story, we started giving solution for the child, and then the first officer, and she kept on saying what? I'm speaking from the standpoint of the officer, the investigator who reopened the case, right? So that means now we are focusing on who is now, whose dharma we are talking about.
The investigation.
Right? So that investigating officer's dharma we are talking about. Otherwise what happens? We look at the whole situation and we have all kinds of solutions for everyone, and there's no clarity about who has to make a decision and whose dilemma we are talking about. That is the first step. Identifying, if you want a framework, this is how you need to go about thinking about it. Right? Who are you talking about? Okay? So you can't solve entire world's problems. You only can think about what? In this given point in time, I am the decision maker placed in this situation. What is my dharma? Okay? The minute you start to solve the whole world's problem, your mind is going from all one direction to the other. There is no clarity there. Okay? So that's the first step. Having said that, now let's look at this investigator and what is the dilemma. The dilemma is right now the child is in the hands of people who are looking after the child. But what is the problem? They have not taken the child with the right needs. That is the problem. Right? I mean, what is the nature? You have to define what exactly the parameters. We don't never define parameters, we just start giving opinions. Right? So that means now this is, if you want to write in one sentence, what is my moral dilemma here? Identify that dilemma. Okay? So now the identification is that the person is in the right hand, but the person is taken through wrong means. Yeah?
And it is the investigator's moral duty as his profession to actually not allow something like this to happen.
Exactly.
Right?
Because
so
otherwise,
in his point of view, it is his, he would wrong himself.
It's his heart against
exactly.
his duty.
So now,
It's against his duty.
let's go step by step.
That's
right?
his profession.
See, that's why now let's go step by step in the analysis to see how we train ourselves to analyze problems with a certain clarity. Because otherwise we all have some opinion or the other, and each one of us is right, but we don't really have a framework. Right? So now we are looking at the framework. So now what this person's dilemma is this. Now, where is that investigator placed in the situation? This is what Meher is saying. The duty of that investigator, his profession, he is bound by that profession. And what is the duty? The duty is the truth, to expose the truth. Right? Because, one minute. In every situation, can you all the time make your own decisions in which case it is allowed? You have to know how the child is treated in each case, and then you take laws in your hand. Can you do that?
No.
You really cannot do that.
That's like all the traffic
So it's
signals
like
not working. It's chaos.
Absolutely. Right? So
He's not a law officer.
But he's an investigator.
He's an investigator.
He's an investigator, and the job, the
reveal the
profession,
truth.
the duties related to that job is to find the truth. Right? But if he only keeps track of this duty that he has, and then what will he do? He will totally disregard what is good for the child. Right? If he just blindly goes only by my duty and then I'm blind to everything else. If he is a little bit mature person, what would he do?
Talk to the child.
Exactly. He would do many things, right? In addition, he understands that this is my duty, but I can't just follow duty, because ultimately it is also what? The well-being of the child that I'm also interested in. Then, how do I ensure, if I can ensure, that I can follow the rules and at the same time ensure the well-being of the child? Is it possible? And what are the ways in which it is possible? And this is where Vela's whole analysis comes. Okay? There are always possibilities that, you think that, oh, the child goes back and it is always going to be bad. But there are so many other options that are available to you to ensure that the child does not fall back in the same rut. And this is where she talked about organizations being there, Okay? And it's true that in the West, the legal systems and legal structures are there, but even in countries like India or anywhere else, there are always NGOs, there are always organizations, whether they are formal or informal, who will take up the cause, right? So now this investigator, okay, what he can do is look for solutions which are what? Satisfying both. Okay? Both his own sense of duty, because you can't always take laws in your hand and begin to interpret according to your, because who knows that you are interpreting it right or not. So you are operating within certain structure when you have your duties. But you can't be so blind about your duties and disregard the consequences of your following your duty on the child whose life is in question. So that means you also have this is what we say, our whole free will. We can find so many creative ways of dealing with a problem. But what happens, we don't operate from clarity, we don't even first write what is the problem. We start thinking about all different people and scenarios and their standpoint, and we don't say, now where am I placed?
You answered my question
Yes, very clearly.
Yeah.
Right? So that means there are always ways, and whole thing is using that framework. Where are you? How? What is your duty? What is the overall good, and how you can what?
But you cannot compromise on the truth or the larger good.
Exactly, you can't.
But
there are ways that you can actually also take care of that problem.
Yes, you have to find ways, but
exactly.
There's no choice in that first step. You do have to take that first step and then
work rest out. Because we see this black and white situation. We think that when he makes that decision based on his duty, he's totally disregarding the child. This is our implicit assumption.
No, he's not, because he is going to check on the child and when it ends. It's
not
like
but
he's his
but he's only going, but he's probably, he could have been maybe a little bit more proactive and or involve certain organizations, because all these structures are available.
Then he might do that in future.
That was open. I don't think that he would have shown. Yeah, it was only a matter of, in a way he's opening a can of worms, and could he have kept it shut was my question.
Yeah.
But he doesn't need to.
But I think what may be very clear to you, but I think when we are talking about framework, we have to talk about each step very explicitly.
And understand that you can't just do this without your knowledge.
Because when you give framework, you need to, many things we understand, but if they are not made very explicit, what happens? Sometimes you take them into consideration, sometimes you don't.
And this eventually, how long can the child be living in the shadow? Eventually the truth has to come out. And how long
We can't keep escaping and hiding and nobody
you can't
comes to
live
know.
like that. That's not
So
possible.
eventually, it might be worse for the
It
child.
was exactly.
When she realizes, herself
that these people have
it's
kidnapped
wrong.
me. How long are they going to hide away from the world? You can't. It's a lifeline.
Because if you look at it now, then you must place yourself. So
He might decide,
she's made a very good choice by
now she needs
actually leaving this mother that she loves so much, because she's
Let's kidnap another one.
thing and doesn't want
This
that
is
responsibility in
where
the way
this
of looking
is
after this
and how
child
many
and
times
whatever
we
other
go
way.
and assess, whether the child who's kidnapped is used for what purpose and all.
Exactly. Because after a while, there's no obligation. This is not my flesh and blood. Then what? There's so many thoughts that go through your mind.
So many thoughts that go through your mind. That's why you need a framework.
We see so many times that people adopt children.
To not allow
Then that child has some disease and that parent starts feeling, why did I adopt this one? I'm stuck with this lifelong illness. And it is, it's just mind-boggling how to deal with that. As a pediatrician, so now he's yours. You cannot get away from it.
Yes.
Because you have made a free choice, right? You have made that, you have used your free will The child didn't come to you, you have made it. Then now you have to live with the consequences of that. You can't just say now, okay, now this is difficult.
Yesterday I
then
saw
I'm
this
just going to
autistic child who was
observe.
adopted, and they're like, now shut up, they don't know what to do, how to deal with this child.
Oh.
Yeah, why you doing
So
that?
they didn't know that.
The child was adopted at 1 year, that child was diagnosed autism.
Right?
So what happens to people who taken pets? Sometimes
Pets,
they
yeah,
they
exactly.
abandon them and then
Yeah, same
poor,
story.
animals are just abandoned, sometimes left on the road.
We have this happening
Truth
a
and
lot.
duty is really your first dharma, but taking on responsibility of the consequences of whatever ensues from that is also part of it.
You can't just stick to only that dharma and then, disregard that. So that's why. Okay. So now, okay, so that is now all the discussion about what we call samanya dharma, universal values. What is the second aspect of dharma? When we talk about karma su kaushala, we are not only talking about the universal ethical values. There is a vision of Vedas or Gita which talks about another aspect of dharma, which is what we call swadharma. Okay? What is swadharma? Swadharma is your own duties and responsibilities in this world, okay? Which are very specific. It's not just that you have to follow dharma, that is true for everyone, but you as an individual have a unique place in this grand scheme of things. And you are related to different people differently. And those relations, those roles that you play require specific actions on your part. Okay. Now this is something which is very important to understand, that many times, this is a very common thing. Okay? People go to some spirituality class and they say that, oh, I hear from my teacher that I have to be detached from the world. And then they say that I can be detached from the rest of the world, but how can I be detached from my own children? Very common question. Right? Then what I have to say, what makes you think that Gita is talking about detachment? It is never talking about detachment in the first place. Okay? What it is talking about is the fact that you are living in an interconnected world. You are connected to the world. Okay? In this world, that you are connected to every human being, whether you know it or not.
Yeah.
Okay? But within those connections, there are some connections which are much more close than the other. Please understand, this is how the world is set up. It is talking about world being a yajna. Yajna means what? Each one is connected to other through series of laws. There is no such thing called detachment. You try to simplify your life and you say, I'm going to have the most simple home and the most simple clothes and the most simple food. Still, how many people would you rely on? Countless. Countless. Please understand, there is no possibility of detachment anywhere.
Even if you sit on top of a mountain, you are still not detached.
Even if you sit on top of the mountain,
Naked. You are
naked,
yeah.
right? You still depend upon what?
The only person who's convinced is yourself. Nobody else is really convinced by that.
You are connected to the world. This is a given.
Yes.
Right? We are not talking about detachment. Please erase this detachment and lack of desire. I mean, I don't know where it comes from. It certainly doesn't come from Gita. Okay? It talks about a very dynamic way of looking at your connection with the world. Okay? Because I'm connected to all the forces, but at the same time, I'm connected to some individuals specially. That is a fact. You didn't choose your parents, you didn't choose your children, you are coming connected to them. And along with those connections come what? your responsibilities and your duties. This is what we call swadharma. You don't have the same responsibility towards every child in the world as you have towards your child, because you, in the scheme of things, you have a special connection to that child. Then, if that child has come in your care according to the laws, what do you have to do? You have to play that part. You can't say, oh, I want to be same with everyone. You can't be, because it's not, the world is not designed like that. So that means then focusing, where am I? What are my special relationships? And for each of these relationships, you have duties. This is what we call swadharma. Okay? So here we are talking about recognizing different roles that we play, and different roles have different scripts, right? Because you are a child with reference to your parents. So you play a role of what?
Being a good Indian child.
Yeah, be a good child. But with your own children, you are a parent. So you play a different role altogether. You are now a parent. So that means you are both a child and a parent. Can you mix up those roles?
And those are also very
So
hard to follow.
with reference to your parents, you have to play role of a child. You can't change that role. With reference to your own children,
and then you have to become
Yeah, then
You
you
have
draw
to-
from
Oh,
each.
the roles can exist.
You may draw from the
the
experience,
roles, exactly.
but the role stays.
The roles stays and the scripts are different for each role that you play. Okay? So therefore, you first need to see which role you are playing and what is an appropriate script for that.
And again, that clarity thing comes in.
Yeah, exactly. It's all about
But
clarity, Roshni.
even again there I find within our scriptures the Ramayana is so messed up. I find the Ramayana messed up where Ram didn't get his duties as a husband and father, correct? But I don't know. And
No, I
took his role as the
No,
Lord.
we
We
talked
talked
about
about
this.
that it's a larger, the duty
It's
to
a
the
larger,
country
yeah.
has to
Gandhiji
come about the
or
duty
Plus,
to
it's also certain roles at
Wife
certain
and son.
times will come on the forefront, and the other roles will have to take a back burner, because that is the need of that hour for that role.
Excellent.
I've just been
Excellent.
through it. I
You just
left
went
my
through it?
9-year-old at home. He said, Mom, I don't understand why you can't take me with you. And I said, now I need to be with my parents. I'm there for you, but I need to be with my parents. And he said, okay. He started with FaceTime. I said, yes. And that's it. So I've been through this very thing right now. And so right now I am the daughter.
Yeah.
That's
Excellent.
exactly
Yeah.
what I am.
Yeah. That's the role that you're playing,
Yeah.
and you need to play that
I
role.
needed it.
Yeah,
I
because
needed
you're
it.
not only related to one person,
Exactly.
you are related to several individuals.
I've just done that very thing.
Wonderful.
Right? So that means that now, within that, I think what is very important, see, the thing is, if you bring in all the information, that's why we are talking about framework. You go step by step. So that is one thing, is that now there is this one role that you are playing, which is, let's say, that of a parent. But even that is just not one script. Because the way you relate to your child when the child is 5 years old, and the way you relate to your child when the child is 15 or 25 or 35, it has to change.
It's dynamic.
It's dynamic. Everything is dynamic. So that means we get stuck that this is my child. So you what? You, just as you were giving the child orders what to do when the child was 5 years old, when the child is teenager, you continue to give the same orders. We do that.
People do that.
Yeah.
Do that, yeah.
You don't give benefit of this thing that now the child is a different child. His brain has developed differently. Okay? So that means not only you have to play different roles and there is a different script, right? Within that role there are constant changes.
It's complicated.
Yeah. But you know, when we make decisions, we are not even aware of any of that. We are not even aware of the fact that we are playing different roles, and I need to what? respond differently because different things are asked for my thing at different times. I just do whatever. This is what we say. Understanding dharma is a very, very important because it gives you a certain framework. Okay? So that means that even within a role there are constant changes because it's all dynamic. And even as a child, when you are young, you are dependent upon your parents. But as you grow old, what? The whole role changes. Within the same role, the script changes. So that means what is called for me at this given point in time and not get stuck with my image.
Situational is what it is.
Exactly, situational. So that's why it's alert living. There is no such thing called, okay, now I have, these are all the solutions and I just have to blindly follow. No. That dynamic, each thing is situation specific and I have certain guidelines. And within that I have to what? It's all about clarity. Mindfulness, alertness, clarity, having understanding of how the world operates, changing my view of the world, how it operates, all this goes into right decision making.
In many ways, being a physician embodies this because if it was just facts, people could feed their symptom into a computer and get an answer. Whereas each patient is same, but there's still differences. So we live it.
But in any profession, you could be a teacher.
Yeah.
Each student is different. Each one's needs are different. Each one comes with a different set of background, framework, understanding.
Even in a business
So
situation, every situation is actually different.
Yeah.
But you have to understand it like that and enjoy it.
You're talking to people.
See, what happens is, we are not in touch with what is. We are in touch with what? Our belief systems.
Because if you perceive it like this, you enjoy even the daily living.
You enjoy because every situation
is a challenge.
It's a challenge. It tests you. It tests your capacity to analyze things clearly.
Unless you perceive it like this, then it becomes the big deal. This is also body, that is also.
Exactly.
Or everything looks like a burden.
It's like a burden. The mindfulness actually makes you enjoy it.
Enjoy the whole process because constantly what? You are challenged and you have to make decisions and you have to use your...
And that makes you so young at heart.
Exactly.
Because if you ask me, I am 75 tomorrow, you tell me 75, it has no meaning to me. It's so just a number. But I know at what point I am at, and that enjoyment is very high.
Exactly. Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
So this whole...
But I'll say that Gayatri is the one that teaches you to see the truth. You see this whole big picture, the Gayatri will show you the truth.
Absolutely. Right? So this is what? This whole life, from burden, it has to become what? Highly cheerful. This enthusiasm, proactiveness, this is what spirituality is all about. It's not about leaving the world and sitting in some corner and saying the world is all full of sorrow. And not at all.
Totally. It's all about joy. No?
It's all about joy. It's all about freedom.
Yeah.
This is why we use the word moksha. Moksha is what? Freedom. Freedom, it's not that when I remove myself in midst of being
All of this.
the whole thing, I am free. Because what? I operate from clarity. Okay? It is all embellishing you with all the right values, attitudes with which you can live your life meaningfully.
Would you say one of the attitudes is also then, I think less of myself, meaning I don't project my ego onto everything. I let things happen, I see it from that point of view and not say, but I'm in charge. I've got to actually do this.
So we tend to layer our thoughts with what is she thinking and what did she mean and maybe she meant that, and we tend to overanalyze subjectivity. Yeah.
we add our own colors, right, into interpretation.
Yeah.
And this is reducing those coloring and seeing more things as they are. Okay. And our roles assessing accurately. Okay. Because the other thing about Swadharma, and I will stop there, the other thing about Swadharma is, there are different things now that we are talking about. We moved from Samanya Dharma to Swadharma. Swadharma, what did we understand? That you are related to different individuals differently and it requires different behavior and actions on your part. Then even within the same role, what is required is changing all the time. The third thing that we saw within Swadharma is sometimes there is a conflict between, right, what is the duty of one role
With the other.
This is the third aspect. Okay? And this is where what Veda talks about as being Ramayana, the dharmas being mixed up. Because the decisions that Rama made went against his own family over the larger good. Okay? So this is something which is again a constant debate, that what is this the right thing to do. Okay? So now what is our analysis? What did we see? That when you play a certain role, which is an additional responsibility, like a leader, you are placed differently. Okay? And for that person who is playing a different role, at times, what?
He has to choose between
Yes, to choose between that larger good and the personal good. Right? And as a rule, because the person is playing that leader, lives of so many depend upon that person. It's not just about your own personal well-being. In that role, the person has to what? At times, the larger good takes a precedence.
But what Veda probably meant is that in Ram's case, the larger good was constantly used to sacrifice his life. I mean, if you really see it.
With
But he
Sita,
didn't have clarity at all times. I'm sure.
He constantly put that before his personal, which is very, maybe because he is we see him as Lord, he's supposed to do it, but from her angle, because we view it as women. So.
Excellent. Now, the second thing is, even if you choose larger good, Sumi's point is that you are still related to that person. Okay? You can't totally ignore the person. So therefore, in Swadharma, even if you are looking at larger good, you can always find ways, right? Explore the options how you can also take care of this relationship, which we often ignore.
Yeah, which many great leaders have ignored.
They have ignored. Mahatma Gandhi, same case. Amazing leader who is able to what? Mobilize the entire nation towards a larger goal, and his own son feels miserable.
Even his wife, if you read, for the longest time, if you read about her life from her angle.
So that means that this is the dilemma of a leader. From the standpoint of his duty towards the nation, it is right. But the thing is, we think that this is how it is, right? You only look at that role and you totally disregard. But this is where doing things differently is something which is always an option. Please understand that.
Even Indira Gandhi, I mean her husband,
Nehru
relationship with him, Nehru's relationship.
Nehru had so many other personal issues.
I'm saying his thing with Indira.
Yeah, and which is what made her behave in a particular way with her husband.
Absolutely.
So whatever they did as a dynasty for the nation on once, but they sacrificed.
But often I think sometimes even if he did want to help his relationship with his child, I'm sure he did try. I'm sure at some levels he must have. These are just assumptions that we make
Based
that
on
he did not try. We don't know what he must have done because he cannot be so insensitive. A man who is so sensitive to freeing the whole nation cannot be so insensitive to his own blood.
But Gandhi
I mean, it's not possible. I'm sure the child also must have retaliated and not allowed to take in whatever suggestions Gandhi must have given to him and must have just revolted because he was probably immature in a lot of sense.
And his expectations,
and
his expectations were
different.
you are my great father.
But I'm
therefore.
sure the man, I mean, I think it is wrong for us to assume that.
But I think what we're saying
in the larger picture, one sees it like that because one is just seeing it from the outside.
I feel that conscious decisions by people like that are taken. And I agree. I can't say it's a right or it's a wrong.
In that situation,
but
you have to choose in many ways because if
you have to choose,
you wouldn't be able to make the choices
to do the choices
in a lot of situations.
And as you said,
that there is
they probably did it with clarity. And
I'm sure they must have tried to make the child understand that I need to do X, Y, Z for the larger picture, but it's hard for the child to have absolutely understood.
He may not be as driven as he is.
Exactly. He's only seeing his personal.
Decided to only serve the poor, and maybe we felt as children that we didn't have as many fancy clothes as our friends, but people might come.
Like you always, sometimes you feel mommy loves the other child more, mommy doesn't love me, but I don't think mommy has really done that. You know, it's just something that we just keep add on to ourselves, and I think the child needs to at that point.
But you know, Gopi, it's not always the consequences that I know it can.
In fact, sometimes
having made that decision, some of the consequences are not
and then
good, or you know, and they accept that. Okay, that I'd rather not, you know, let this be with my child, but I need to do this. But it's done with clarity.
Okay, we close what I think Gopi brought a very, very important point. It's like we use certain characters and we simplify their behavior. Things are far more complex, right? Now, the whole purpose of doing that is not to point fingers at anybody. No. The purpose of is what? Us. Please, 1 second. When we make decisions, what we can do. The whole purpose comes back to us that there are dilemmas at times. Exactly. Because I constantly have to make choices. Okay? Now, when I use that example, right, and I show it to what? That there are always possibilities of doing things differently that is always available to me. Sometimes we all tend to ignore that. Now I'm making you aware of this fact. So in your decision making, you try your best.
Basically, we have to be very conscious all the time.
Exactly.
We are making decisions all the time.
Yeah, but conscious with a proper framework. See, if you're over-conscious without a wise framework, you're constantly confused.
Totally.
Right? So what we are trying to learn from Gita class is not just a random discussion of all the different variables and going on giving our opinions, right? To come up as a result of all this discussion, what we are thinking, we are talking about having certain clarity about how to go about looking at a problem and how to go about analyzing it so that we can fine-tune our decision making.
Yes.
Right? Otherwise there is no end. And you all get confused and you all have standpoints and you all think that you are speaking very wisely, which is true. But it still doesn't give you the clarity.
Yeah, but it still eventually has to have purpose.
Yeah.
To yourself.
Exactly.
And change what you
Absolutely.
need to change.
The whole point is coming back to ourselves. Not having some abstract discussions about people and their motives and all. She's very right? Because when people live their life, it's not that Gandhiji could be so insensitive. It's a very perceptive what she's saying. Okay? But we are not blaming him. We are not pointing fingers at him. What we are trying to do is fine-tune our decision making. Using him as just one example.
Yeah, also for us to come to terms with the fact that sometimes you have to make a choice that may not be perfect for everyone.
And this emotional thing that tends to get in, that's I think what we've got to be very clear about.
Okay, now that is something which is another thing which we have to really dispel this whole thing. When we talk about objectivity in decision making, are we talking about not letting our emotions interfere? Is it? This is no. Okay,
That's
so we
another
will
one.
see next time.
That will be an interesting
Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.